This is a new session for a tutorial. We are still speaking about lists and tuples, and this is a new, you can say, scenario or a new question about two-dimensional lists. So in this question we are asked or requested to create a two-dimensional list where this list will include certain scenario of elements, or we call it in mathematics lower triangular matrix. So this lower triangular matrix would have the main diagonal as 1, all of the elements of main diagonal equal to 1, and all elements above the main diagonal, we will have a triangle above the main diagonal equals to 0, all the elements, and all elements below the main diagonal are equal to 2. So it's just a scenario. Above the main diagonal, the triangle above the main, this is the main diagonal here. This triangle on top, so imagine this is a list like this here. The main diagonal just coming from top corner to down corner. So the left top, right at the bottom. On top here we have zeros, and down here we have 2's, and the main diagonal all 1's. So how do we create it? We need to receive the size. It's m times m. That means the size is exactly square m times n. The same size for rows and columns. And we need to receive it in the main function. Then we need to call a function called lower triangular that will create for us this list or two-dimensional list and returns it to the main function, and then we can display it. Well, let's go directly and create it. So we need a def main, and in the main we need to receive the size from the user, and the size here is integer, remember. Well, you can use try and except if you want, and that means the exception handling, because we may receive an integer here in this case. Maybe the user mistakenly will enter it maybe 3 or 4 by words, not by numbers. Okay. Enter the size of your matrix, and then we've received the size. So all we need to do is we need to call our function and assign the return from the function to our list. So let's call our list is mat, for example, and the function itself is called lower triangular, and we need to receive just m as an argument. Well, now we have the list, the two-dimensional list, so we can create nested loops to display the elements in it. So for I in range, now there are different ways to do it. We can use range m. Why? Because it's m times m. And after we finish, I'll explain to you other ways around this way. So it's not necessarily that we stick to one way, which is not applicable all the time, by the way. But for this time is applicable because the size here m times m is square, similar to a square matrix. Now we call it a list, two-dimensional list. Right. So we created these two nested loops. So we have one loop, the outer one for the rows. So we have m rows, and then we have n columns. Okay. So for each row we have n columns. Okay. So for these columns, what we need to do, we need to print what? The elements of the matrix, or the array that the list that we are speaking about, I and j. However, we need some formatting scenario here. Leave some space between the elements. So after each element we leave a space. Then we say the end is equal to 0. Do not jump to a new line after each display. Well, jump to a new line after each inner loop. each inner loop will present one row. So after each row, jump to a new line. Okay, this is the way we human beings write matrices, or we type or we write the row after a row after a row. So once a row is done, we move to the next. We move to the next until the last row. Okay, we're done here. We skip. We get out of the loop, and that's it for the main. We go out of the main. We create another function, triangular, and we receive the size, and you can give it another name if you like, a variable name, it doesn't matter. Now we have the size. So what we need to do, initially we need to create a two-dimensional list. In order for us to do this, we have different ways. I personally prefer this way. Well, let's say I use this name. I can use Matt also. I can use any other name, it doesn't matter. For example, I can use T. Okay, just any valid name in this case for the two-dimensional array. Now I would like to create two-dimensional array. Two-dimensional array in this case is actually an array. Two-dimensional list is actually a list of lists. That means we have a list inside the list. Okay, so a list inside the list. Good. Let's initialize all the elements to 0 at the beginning. So how many rows do I have? M. How many columns do I have? Well, I can create it using a loop for I in range M also. Well, that is good enough for us. Why? Because we're going to have 4 rows and 4 columns in this case. There are other methods or ways you can create a two-dimensional array with them. This is the most convenient to me, so I prefer to use this one. I prefer to go for this one. Now we need to create the rhythm or the scenario. Above the main diagonal is equal to 1, above the main diagonal 0, below the main diagonal 2. Okay, well, we can loop and then inspect. So I don't have to repeat. I can use these loops. Why do I need to repeat? I can save my time and yours. Right, because we're using the same variable here and the same scenario of looping. Now what we need to do, we don't need to display, rather we need to test. How do we know the triangle above the main diagonal and the triangle below the main diagonal and the diagonal itself? We can inspect them by the values of I and j. Well, if I is less than j, I need to have if I is less than j. Now in this case, now first row is index is 0. Okay, first column is index is 0, so I and j are equal to 0 in this case. Let's move, we are still in the first row, let's move j. So I will be 0 and j will be 1. Well, that is the first element in the above, the triangle above the main diagonal. Well, if you move, then j is greater than I. J is greater than I. J is greater than I. So all the triangle above the main diagonal, we have I less than j. Well, so this is above the main diagonal, and in this case we can assign the value of I and j, the list, the element of the list, or all elements of this list, exactly above the main diagonal, to what? To 0. This is the condition. Then we have another condition. Well, if I, maybe you can say equal to, or maybe you can go for greater than. Well, we said when I is less than j, that is the triangle above the main diagonal. If you say if I is greater than j, in that case it's exactly the opposite. When I is greater than j, that means we are considering the triangle below the main diagonal. Okay, so in this case we will assign I and j equal to 2. Well, the third condition is just else, because we don't have any other, and that's for the main diagonal. When I is neither equal nor less than is neither less nor greater than j, which is equal to j, and that is the main diagonal. So in the main diagonal, what we have is we have exactly one as a value. This is what's requested from us in the question. Let me show you again. Main diagonal 1, for the above the main diagonal 0, below the main diagonal 2. Well, okay, that will do for us. Okay, we exit the if statement, we exit the for, the inner for, we exit the outer for, and then we can return the list, the two-dimensional list. Now we are out of the function. Well, what would you, lar, okay, let me fix this one. I made a mistake in the name. Lar triangular. Lar, we have to use the same name here. Okay, lar triangular. So now we can call the main in order for us to run the program. And let's just save and run. Well, the matrix size, let's go for 4. Well, that's it. So you see, this is the main diagonal I was explaining to you here. 1, 1, 1, 1. This kind of line from the top left angle to the right bottom angle is the main diagonal. And above it, this triangle is supposed to be 0, and our question is requested to be all zeros, and below it is requested to be all 2s. So now we have it exactly based on these conditions we created. And this is one of the ways that we manipulate two-dimensional arrays, two-dimensional lists. I keep saying arrays because I teach also Java and other programming languages, and we use arrays, not lists actually. In Python, we don't have the concept of arrays, rather we have the concept of lists. However, they apply to very similar, you can say, concepts, or they apply to very similar methods or types of applications or problem scenarios in programming. Okay, so here what we are referring to is actually the creation of a two-dimensional list where we have m times m list. Well, you may tell me, do you have any other way to do it? Yes, there are actually not only one way, there are 2 or 3 ways. You can create m times m or m times n list. Well, you can go through the possible ways. This is one of the ways. We can use this one, 0, repeated m times, and then we enclose the list here. We put a bracket, then repeated m times or n times. Again, it depends on the size. This is possible, but I would prefer to go for this one. It's more stable for, in my case, I prefer it. Well, I hope you guys will benefit from this question, and I will upload another chapter, theoretical chapter, very soon. Also, I would like to highlight that I have to upload an assignment. I will do it within this weekend. Also, we need to set up a time for a quiz. We will have a quiz very soon. I may use Schoology for that. So we need to set up a time, fixed date and time. And this quiz will be open book. However, the time will be extremely limited, so it will not be easy for you to just you know, go through Google or whatever, or try to write a code and you know, get the output and so on. So you need to rely on your own understanding of the course so that you can answer the questions. Although you would have all your material with you, but it wouldn't be that much easy to use the material within the limited time that I will consider during the quiz. I will inform you about the quiz very soon, and until then, have a good time. Goodbye.